Welcome to another Sketchbook Play Date, a series I created to help you fill the pages of your sketchbook, build your skills, and have fun while making art. This playdate is full of playful creativity. It's perfect if you're wanting to create with your hands and kind of explore and get more comfortable with shape and color. I literally had so much fun while creating this piece, and I think you will too. Okay, let's get into it. For today's sketchbook playdate, we are going to make our own stamps. If you followed me anywhere, you know that I have quite the affinity for stamp art. But I've always made it like digitally, so digital stamp art. And I thought that it would be really fun to create my own stamps to make art with, like physical stamps. But I didn't want to have to buy a bunch of like carving tools or rubber blocks. And I was like really intimidated to make my own rubber stamps because I didn't want to cut myself. I don't know if you've ever seen how they do that. But then I discovered foam stamps. So you will need a few supplies for this sketchbook playdate. Don't worry, they're not expensive. A piece of foam, and you can find this at Michael's for like 50 cents. But if you don't want to take a trip to Michael's, you might even have something around your house, like a styrofoam plate that you can use, or like an old takeout box. That will work perfectly. You'll need some scissors to cut up your stamps, and possibly a ruler. You'll also need some water-soluble markers. You can use any markers you have on hand. So I'm just gonna make some templates to trace onto my foam so I know what shape and size to cut my stamps. The scale or size will vary depending on your sketchbook size or like the piece of paper that you're using, but honestly, like don't overthink this or worry about it too much. I'm basically just starting with a square. My square is about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. And from here, you can kind of just double the square to make a rectangle or like a bar shape. And then you double that bar to make a big square. And you're kind of doing this shape construction thing where you're adding or taking away from these very basic shapes to create your stamps. And I just want you to know, like, I was so not perfect when I cut out my stamps. I was just playing it by ear, kind of cutting whatever felt right, and like, don't overthink this part. But if math and measuring or numbers are not your thing, which I'm assuming they're not because you're a creative person, I decided to create a little free printable download that has all the shapes you'll need to create this piece. So the link is in my description if you want to use that, but if you feel like you just want to go with the flow and, size things out depending on feel, then you're totally welcome to do that too. Because these are not complicated shapes at all. They're just squares, triangles, circles, nothing fancy. After you have all of your stamps cut out, then the fun can begin. So I don't have any ink pads on hand, and honestly, I plan on using a lot of colors. Like, if I were to buy all of the colors that I want to use in ink pads, it would be like $60. And I know because I was at Michael's and I priced it. So I'm just going to use what I have on hand, which is markers. And I figured since they're water soluble, then maybe I can just wet them and use them as ink on my stamp. So that is kind of the stamp technique that I'm going to do for this lesson. What you'll do is you'll basically just take one of your stamps that you cut out and color on it with marker. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush and just like barely dip it in the water because I need to activate the ink from the marker. And then you can grab a sketchbook and kind of just do a little test stamp. And like see how that works for you, because the ratio of water is like so key in this practice. And it's honestly something that I kind of struggled with the entire time through this. I was putting way too much water, and you kind of just need just ever so slightly enough water to transfer the ink from the stamp to the paper. So I want this rectangle shape that's kind of like a tower of my castle to have two little windows cut out of it. But to cut out negative shapes from inside the stamp would be really difficult and definitely involve a like razor or an X-Acto. And I'm not about that life. I'm not trying to get cut. So I am going to do a technique where I just use my scissors to cut out two little rectangles from a piece of paper. And then I'm gonna stick them on my stamp and kind of let the water make them adhere to the stamp. And that will act as a mask. So we'll see how this works out. Okay, not bad. It didn't turn out exactly how I wanted, but I think again I need to adjust my water ratio. Another fun technique that you can do with your stamps is to use a pencil to carve into the foam to give a texture or a pattern to your stamp. I thought it would be cute if I had like a little scallop pattern on the roof of this tower. So I'm going to carve into this triangle and see if that works. Honestly, I don't know if it's going to turn out how I want it to. I still have the other side of the triangle like unaffected. So if my carving turns out terrible, at least I still have that other side of the stamp that I could use. So not that much of a risk, but feel free to explore with carving textures, and you could maybe write your name into it or draw a little person in the window. Like there's so much potential here. As far as composition goes, you can just use your imagination and kind of like pretend like you're playing with blocks and creating a castle, like however you'd like. I am taking inspiration from my digital stamp piece of this that I did in Procreate that was inspired by Mary Blair, which I feel like it's very obvious. I hope it is. I really was aiming for that. If you don't know Mary Blair, she is an artist who is definitely worth Googling. She worked very closely with Disney to develop the Small World ride. And that's one of my favorite rides. But so this is based off that. And I'm kind of just like using that piece as inspiration, but I'm also kind of just like figuring it out as I go. Speaking of inspiration, this sketchbook playdate was actually inspired by my neighbor, so shout out to her. One day I ran into her outside and she gave me the kindest, like in my eyes, the highest compliment that you can give someone. She said she was like, "Oh my God, I found your YouTube and I have been loving it." And she said, "It feels like anyone can do it." And I was like, yes, like that's how I want everyone to feel, like just empowered to make art, regardless of if you like call yourself an artist or not. I kind of like to think of you guys all as like my art friends. And I know that you guys are all so creative and very smart. So I feel like you can just figure anything out and do anything. But mostly, this is kind of selfish, but I just want to see your art. I feel like the best way to get to know someone and to like express yourself is to create something. And every time someone I know, like my boyfriend's not an artist, but every time he creates something, I'm like, oh my God, you're so creative. And I love seeing what's in his heart. But yeah, so back to my neighbor. She has two little boys, and she said that she has been using my sketchbook playdates as like her little art lesson, her art time for her kids. And she said that they did the shape construction one, and she was like, it was kind of a fun test because I wasn't sure if my little son could draw a square. And I was like, man, like I should like that's what inspired this sketchbook, because like these stamps like literally require no drawing, and everyone gets to play. So we all get to have fun making art together. So once everything is all said and done and you're finished with your stamps, like you can honestly stop here because like I'm sure your castle looks great. But if you wanted to, you can go the little extra step and add some fun details by using any of the media that you have on hand, like markers, colored pencils, I don't know, ink pen, crayons. I think I'm going to use a mixture of my Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s because they are also water soluble, and maybe play with some line detail with my colored pencils. I think this is like a great practice to get more comfortable with your art supplies, and you can really figure out what supplies mesh well together. Like some layer really great over one another, some you can't put color pencil on top of it and it like doesn't work. So have fun with your supplies and explore and play and see what you come up with. All right, you guys, that is it. That concludes this sketchbook playdate. I hope you've had so much fun creating this stamp art castle. Please, 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 please let me know how your piece turned out below. Like, I wish that YouTube would let you comment photos because I am like dying to see everyone's art. I just got back on Instagram. I can't promise I'll be there, but if you want to, you can DM me a photo or tag me. My handle is the same as my YouTube at Sam Aker Art Maker, and I would love to see your art. So please slide into my DMs. All right, you guys, until next time, bye.